Let's bring you a couple of stories involving the controversial topic of schools and children and trans and gender. Rishi Sunak is bringing in a new policy that means schools will be forced to tell parents if students are questioning their gender, as it's emerged that a teacher has branded a 13-year-old girl despicable because she refused to accept that her classmate is now a cat. Joining me now is Peter Williams, who's the director of the Family Education Trust. Peter, thank you very much. First things first, should teachers be making pupils accept that their classmate is a cat?
Certainly not, and this is simply illustrative of the institutional capture of schools, right up to the Department of Education, actually, of radical gender ideology. And unfortunately, this is actually expressing itself now in another kind of weird fad of having furries. They're actually, in our institution, we actually have some cases of people who have reported to us that there are certain two lads, 16 and 14, so fifth form and third form, and they've got 4 girls in the third form and fifth form who identify as cats or something like that. So furries being someone who identifies as an animal. One girl does not wash because she thinks her body's an ecosystem like an animal, and I'll let you imagine what the consequences of that are. We've got another girl who barks and growls at her fellow students.
Oh, they're my ex.
So there are lots of cases of this, unfortunately, not just in one school here, but actually across the system, where what we're actually doing is encouraging children to think of themselves in a way that are divergent from reality. And if there's any purpose to a school, it is to teach children to actually recognise reality and facts, and to have a form of self-identification that actually is in keeping with their flourishing, not contrary to it, as this clearly would be.
And I'll play this clip a little bit later on the show, but it is the teacher having a stand-up row with a year person should be considered a cat, which is just bonkers. And the consequences for that pupil were to be threatened to be expelled from the school and to be reported to the headmaster for not believing that that individual was a cat. And these are the people that are teaching your kids. But some potential good news, which is that Rishi Sunak might put a stop to all of this if teachers can't hide from parents that their children are wanting to be referred to as a different gender.
Quite right, because, I mean, ultimately it comes down to this. Parents are the primary educators of their children. They always should be. That's a core function of the family, which is supposed to be this atmosphere of love in which parents can rightly form their children. And if you take that away from them by saying, well, actually, no, we're going to form your children maybe very contrary to your own principles, then that's utterly, utterly unacceptable. Anyone who wants to learn more about this, we have a Family Education Trust conference on Saturday. Anyone who's interested in this subject can come to that and learn more. But this is the kind of thing that we really need to fight.
I've just got time for one more quick one, and it's when we see all of this trans nonsense going on in schools and the threatening behaviour towards children from the people who are supposed to teach them, and the idea that now children might be in schools acting as cats, and that's OK, which I hope doesn't mean that they get to poo in a litter box at the back of the classroom, by the way. Rise in homeschooling?
I'd like to see that, actually. I think there is a rise in homeschooling, but there are also worrying signs that government want to crack down on that. They don't trust parents, evidently, to do that. But when we see what's actually happening in schools, are we actually surprised that parents may want to do this? Exactly. Why wouldn't you? So we do need to defend the right of parents to do that as well. This is part of a wider campaign, not just this one specific issue.
Absolutely. Look, thank you very much. Again, it's a bit short and sweet, but I think we've got all the key points in there. So it's great to have you on the show, and thank you for coming into the studio. It's Peter Williams there, who's the director of the Family Education Trust.